Hello, all, and welcome. Last episode, we looked at the benefits of a competency mapped corporate training model and how that compares to a traditional corporate training model. Coming up, we'll hear from our guest, Dr. Guido Minaya, CEO and Chief Learning Officer of Minaya Learning Global Solutions, on how companies can go down the path of a competency based training model. Stay tuned to learn more. Hello, Dr. Minaya. Once again, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dario. It's great to be back on with you.
So, continuing the conversation from last episode, we talked about the what, so let's talk about the how. How can companies go down this path of a competency mapped model effectively?
That is a great question, Dario. We may want to look at this from a broader lens first. And by that, I mean that higher ed and many universities are changing as well when it comes to programs which better develop the future workforce. Competency-based education is being leveraged to help students not only learn the theory of certain subject areas, but also include a way to demonstrate what they have learned, right? Putting it into action, so to speak. And this approach, better prepares a future pipeline of resources to jobs that really urgently need to be filled. Higher ed institutions, they've historically collaborated with corporate clients through their continuous education colleges. And although this has been effective, there's now even a greater shift to helping college students become more workforce ready through collaborations with local and regional industry sectors. And this could be, at the associate's degree and bachelor's degree and other programs that they may have.
That is interesting. So, does this mean that there is a deeper collaboration with respect to workforce readiness?
Yes. And it actually goes beyond, any individual company and takes into account, as I mentioned, key industry sectors and an ecosystem that a company operates in. There are, solid examples of how companies and industry sectors are working with higher ed institutions in a more effective way.
So, how does that work?
Well, first off, it's a better understanding of what the needs of the local and regional companies in a particular sector are. And with that, higher ed can develop competency-based education in the skills and knowledge areas that companies really need. And this begins to close the gap between what a student learns from a theory perspective and what companies really need from a skills perspective.
So, what would be an example of this approach then?
Well, I'll take a local example. In our region, the four growing industry sectors include manufacturing, healthcare, logistics, and construction. And with a level of a needs assessment in each key sector, targeted roles may be common in that sector and can be better defined. And then a competency-based curriculum can be tailored to that sector and to those entry-level roles.
Okay. It sounds like this makes it much easier for students then who complete these programs to be more competitive. Is that right?
Yes. And as you can imagine, right, it also reduces the ramp-up time of new employees for companies. So it's a win-win for the employer and the new employee, and even a win for the higher ed institution. Smaller companies in an industry sector can aggregate their needs for common roles, and whereas larger companies may receive additional benefits in that segment of potentially part of that curriculum dedicated to that company's workforce needs.
Okay. So, can you make it a little bit more plain in the sense of how does this relate to the discussion of a traditional model versus a competency-based model?
Yeah, I think the key is really understanding the skills and competencies a company may need for its workforce, let's say at an entry-level position, and including in the curriculum ways to demonstrate that skill and that competency. For a HR leader who is interviewing, a demonstration that potential candidate has those skills is very important, right? And whether it's a simulation, a case study, a process that's within the scope of that industry sector, students now can really show that they not only have the required knowledge, but can also put it into action. And this is really a good emerging trend because it begins to talk the language of what internal corporate training organizations are also focused on, right? So corporate training organizations develop learning paths for critical roles in the organization mapped to competencies.
Mm.
And as required skills change, the learning organization must be able to adapt quickly and create a new learning path to meet that new need.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I think we covered a good bit for this session. So how about in our next session, let's maybe go back a little further into corporate training and what corporate training does to scale these types of programs, whether it's regionally, nationally, or globally.
All right, that sounds like a plan. Thank you, Dr. Minaya, for expanding on how companies can get started down the path of a competency map model. In our next episode, we'll touch on how to scale those types of programs regionally, nationally, and globally. Until next time.